Well, welcome, welcome to our second day of Rosh Hashanah and our study, and we'll do a little prayer and hear the shofar if I can. We'll see how I do with the shofar and what's that? Where's Gail? Yeah, I know it's not here. Yeah, I know it's amazing. Um, and people ask why are there 2 days of Rosh Hashanah when the Reform movement especially got rid of the second days of the other festivals of Sukkot and Pesach and Shavuot. Um, well, the reason you added a second day of Chag outside of the land of Israel for the other festivals was because you announced the new moon from Jerusalem, and then they would have like smoke signals to announce that it's the new moon, and then you would know 2 weeks later that it was Pesach. But if you're living way out in the diaspora, it might not get there in time if you're living in Babylon or Alexandria or Rome. And so they would add an extra day to the Chag in case, just to be sure that they got it on the right day, right? And so in Israel today, there's not a second day of Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. They're the week long, but not an extra day of rest day. The Reform movement in the 19th century got rid of those. One, because there's the biblical precedent of only one day. Two, because it becomes a burden if you're living in the modern world with jobs and things like that. And three, because the reason the rabbis, there's no doubt anymore when the day is because we calculate it now. We don't look at the moon. But Rosh Hashanah, even in the land of Israel, is 2 days because everybody's in doubt when the first day of the month is, right? And then they called one long day. Now, the Reform movement did for a long time. I don't know if they ever said there is no second day of Rosh Hashanah, but they didn't practice the second day of Rosh Hashanah. But since the 90s, I would say Reform congregations have been doing it, especially a lot of them will do an alternative thing like we'll do today. So welcome. And what we're going to do is we're going to study the Torah reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah. The Reform movement, everywhere I don't know, maybe other places don't, but most places I would say studies or chants in the synagogue, actually the second day reading on Rosh Hashanah, they do it on the first day, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. So what I wanted to do was study actually the first day reading, but actually I want to add one more thing to get the background for the first day reading of Rosh Hashanah. And then I want to do some shofar. You with me? Oh, right. Creation of the world, that was an option too. In Gates of Repentance, the last Reform Machzor, they would do the first chapter of Genesis because Hayom Harat Haolam, we say today is the day that the world was birthed, right? And that's why they do the first chapter of Genesis, some congregations. No, they do 2 days in Israel of Rosh Hashanah too. Well, because yeah, I mean, because it might be in doubt when the first day of Tishrei is. And so you do, yeah. So let's give, yeah, let's give thanks. Well, and it's also another reason to do 2 days of Rosh Hashanah because traditionally you don't blow shofar. If Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, you don't blow shofar, and therefore you have another day for the mitzvah of shofar, right? Now, there is an argument in Jewish law codes about blowing shofar. Well, what if we just leave the shofar in the sanctuary so you don't have to carry it to the synagogue? So at one point, some places did blow shofar on Shabbat, but not for hundreds of years at least. But Reform congregations did, who only did 1 day of Rosh Hashanah, right? Okay, let's give thanks for obligation to study Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you by studying Torah for its own sake. Baruch atah Adonai hamlamed Torah la'amo Yisrael. Blessed are you who teaches Torah to your people Israel. So you have the Tanakh, and let's turn to Genesis 16. This is not the reading for Rosh Hashanah, but I want to do it because I want to get the background for the reading for Rosh Hashanah. Okay. Oh no. So you have to share. So we will always take donations of new Bibles. Yeah. Okay. Genesis 16. Does someone want to say what page we're on? 27. Okay. So as I said, the reading, the bulk of the reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah centers on Hagar. But I want to read a parallel story to that first, and then we'll do chapter 21, which is the reading for Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so let's study. So and I'll say also Shai, I've talked about him a lot. Shai Held, who's a Jewish thinker in New York, he's written beautifully on these stories about Hagar, both in his book The Heart of Torah, which is a weekly essays on the Torah portion, and in his new book Judaism is About Love. So that's where I've been thinking about this. So someone like to start chapter 16.
Abraham's wife.
Nah, so Sarai and Avram, right? They have different names first. Yeah.
Born him no children. He had an Egyptian maid servant whose name was Hagar.
Right. So we say anglicized Hagar in Hebrew, Hagar, but it sounds like the word in Hebrew. Does anybody know? Ger. And ger is, usually translated as stranger, but it means someone who is not an Israelite who lives among the Israelites permanently. Okay? So an immigrant, right? An immigrant, though, who lives, not a migrant who goes back and forth, right? Jewish adjacent. Well, and she's in the household too, right? And so a ger also later in the Torah we learn go to the temple, celebrate the holidays and Shabbat and things like that. They're not quite an Israelite, but they're not they're an intermediate category, right? And later in rabbinic tradition, ger comes to mean a convert. But in the Bible, it's not someone who becomes an Israelite. They're in between. So it's kind of like someone with a green card or a work visa or something like that, right? Someone who's there permanently. Okay.
Rabbi, my thing about names.
Yeah.
So, got 3 characters.
Yeah.
One, Hagar, another translation of the name is Flight.
Flight. Okay. Yeah. Sure. And good. Well, we'll see where she flies to, flights to. I don't know, right? But also notice where she's from. Egypt. Now, the people of Israel, this is the first generation, haven't been enslaved in Egypt yet, right? But think about Israel. I mean, we don't even have the word Israelite yet, but think about Israelite and Egyptian. Israelite, Egyptian. Who's powerful, who's not powerful, right? Okay, good.
And who is in
Sarai.
And Sarai said to Abram.
Right, so I could say the names of Sarai and Avram. So Avram means Av means father, and Ram means exalted. Sarai means like a princess. That means kind of, yeah.
Look, the Lord has kept me from bearing. Consort with my maid, perhaps I shall have a son through her. And Abram heeded Sarai's request.
All right, so what's the setup? Sarah hasn't had any children. So what should you do? Have a surrogate, right? Who has agency here? Sarah, right? Hagar has no agency, it doesn't seem like, right? Okay. But it seems like then that kid will be mine, right? A surrogate. Okay. That's what it seems like, or it might be, then you'll have a kid, but I won't. I don't know, right? Yeah, perhaps I shall have a child through her, true, but we'll see what happens. Okay. What's that? Right, right. So that's where, yeah, what's her name? Margaret Atwood gets the idea of Handmaid's Tale, especially from especially Jacob's handmaids. But yeah, that's what it is. And they're forced to do that. Is Hagar forced? Yeah, I mean, we don't see her agency. She is the word shifcha, the maid servant, it could mean, other translations, handmaid, right? It could mean a slave, it could mean, someone hired. It's an ambiguous term, right?
Thanks for that difference.
For sure. They didn't ask her, right? We don't know if they asked her, right?
And Abram heeded Sarai's request. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took her handmaid, Hagar the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt in the land of Canaan 10 years, and gave her to her husband Abram as a concubine. He cohabitated with Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was lowered in her esteem. And Sarai said to Abram, wrong done me is your fault. I myself put my handmaid in your bosom, and now that she sees that she is pregnant, I am lowered in her esteem. The Lord decided between you and me.
Okay, so what's the conflict?
Hagar is rising up in
Yeah,
the hierarchy.
right. Right. So one thing Shai held, I've heard him say, I don't know if he's written, is that even though the Torah will never say down with the patriarchy and multiple wives and things like that, it's bad, it will show that it is not good. Like it causes dysfunctional families, right?
Or is she blaming him because something else was going on in the dynamic that gave Hagar some sort of justification in her mind to see herself raised up? I mean, I think that's part of why.
Yeah.
How does he didn't take the kid? Pardon?
Yeah.
Say, oh, you're pregnant. This is so wonderful. Sarah, I couldn't get pregnant, but you can.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
She's acting like this, so she's blaming him for her behavior, but it makes you think that maybe something else went on other than just the pregnancy.
Mhm.
You know, why else? Because she wanted him to get her pregnant for her. So
It seems to me that, be careful what you wish for, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
It also seems to me that, might stay down with the patriarchy, but this certainly seems that Sarah's incorporating her mind.
Yeah. Perhaps. Yeah. I mean, yeah, yes, for sure. Yeah.
Walter said, translates that it's not that Hagar is not a concubine.
Right.
She's the wife.
Oh,
Wife.
right. Well, never you.
Isha.
Right. Yeah. Isha. Isha could just mean woman, or it could mean wife. Right. Right. But it doesn't use the word for concubine. Right. But Pilgeshet. Yeah.
Which suggests that Sarah has been hoisted on her own petard.
Yeah. Right. Right. Okay.
That's the value of a woman.
Right. Yes and no. Yeah. Right. Right. But is the text, by saying that, critiquing it actually? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, if you read it closely, is it showing that this isn't good for anybody? Yeah, I think. Okay. Where are we? Verse 6? Yeah.
Your maid is in your hands. Deal with her as you think right. And Sarah treated her harshly, and she ran away from her.
Mhm.
The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, and the spring on the road to Shur, and said, Hagar, slave of Sarah, where have you come from, and where are you going? And she said, I am running away from my mistress, Sarah.
Okay, so now let's think about names again. What Avram and Sarai, what have they called her? Called Hagar? Your maid, your maid, your maid. Who calls Hagar by her name? The angel, right? So the manifestation of God, right? God calls, but also calls her a slave, right? Yeah, so it's not as good as we want it to be, but it's Avram and Sarai see her as or Sarai first saw her as just a womb, and then saw her as a rival. Avram, it's kind of only seen her through the eyes of Sarai, or maybe first not and then is, right, but God sees her, right?
What's the word for slave that he's using? Is that the
Yeah,
same-
shivcha, a woman. Shivcha, no, that's an evid. A shivcha is a female maid, right? Yeah, maid, like someone who works, a female who works in the household. Yeah, yeah. Mhm. Okay, someone else pick up verse 9.
The angel of the Lord said to her, Go back to your mistress and submit to her harsh treatment. And the angel of the Lord said to her, I will greatly increase your offspring, and they shall be too many to count. The angel of the Lord said to her, Further, behold, you are with child, and shall bear a son. You shall call him Ishmael. The Lord has paid heed to your suffering. He shall be a wild ass of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. He shall dwell alongside of all his kinsmen.
Right, and what does Ishmael mean? Do you know? Ishmael means God, Shema, like the word Shema is in it. God will hear. That means
Wild ass of a man.
it's going to be like he's going to be. Well, say this. He's going to be very charismatic. What? Irascible. Yeah, yeah. But he's going to be a leader. He's going to be a leader of a people, right? And yeah,
It doesn't need to be a ruffian.
maybe.
He shall dwell alongside all of his kinsmen. And she called the Lord who spoke to her, You are El Roy. By which she meant
El Roi. Yep. Mhm.
Oh, by which she meant, Have I not gone on after seeing, have I not gone on seeing after he saw me?
Right. So the Tikra Shem Adonai, and she called the name of Yud He Vav He, Hadaber Eleha, the one who spoke to her, the God who spoke to her. Right. So God spoke to her, to a servant who's not a descendant of Abraham, an Egyptian. El Roi, right? Ki Ki Amra Hagar Halom Ra'iti Acharei Roi. For I have not gone on seeing after my being seen. Right? So it's all about she was seen, she saw God, God saw her, right? It's all the same word there, right?
Therefore the well was called
Be'er Lahai Roi. Lahai Roi.
It is between Kadesh and Bered. Hagar bore a son to Abram, and Abram gave his son, and Hagar bore him the name Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abraham.
Abram. Good. All right. So that's the first casting out story, right? All right. So remember Hagar, she's an Egyptian. Who's the one who's oppressing the Egyptian? We are. Yeah. Okay. So now's the reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Yeah. Yeah. Not to sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And God tells her that it's your son, not Sarah's son. Yeah, good point. Yeah. The surrogacy thing is not going to work out. Yeah. So did Hagar become kind of a wife then, or at least a concubine? I don't know. Right? Yeah. Okay. So now here's the reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah, chapter 21 of Genesis. Mhm.
What happened between 17 and 21?
They get their names changed, they get the blessing, the angels come and tell Sarah she's going to be pregnant. We have Sodom and Gomorrah. A lot of stuff happens. Right? Yeah. But I just want to look at the two Hagar stories. Okay.
The Lord took note of Sarah as he had promised. The Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken. Abraham gave his newborn son, whom Sarah had borne him, the name of Isaac.
Right. And Isaac comes from an earlier chapter where Sarah laughs when she finds out she's going to be pregnant because she's so old. Yitzchak has to do with laughter, playfulness, right?
Son Isaac was 8 days old. Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. The father did circumcision.
Yeah. And that's why, no, you do. At a Brit Milah, the Mohel says to you, or you say to the Mohel, you take as an agent for me, you do this mitzvah. Yeah. So you can do it yourself. And I know doctors and nurses who have done that, but that's where it comes from. Yes. Ishmael was also circumcised when he was 13. And that's why in some Muslim cultures, not all Muslim cultures, some Muslim cultures, you do circumcision at 13. Mhm. Abraham was like 100 and something. I don't know. Yeah.
All the varmints or kids, they should just.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give it a choice.
Yeah.
Give it a choice.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Would've been enough.
Mhm. Yeah.
And now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would suckle children? Yet I have borne a son in his old age.
In his old age, not my old age, right? Yeah. But it's it's seen as a miraculous birth. That's how we're supposed to do it because God has the power to make both men and women fertile, right? Okay.
The child grew up and was weaned, and Abraham held a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. Sarah saw the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had born to Abraham land.
Right. So now this plane, mitzachek, is the same root as Yitzchak. What does plain mean is taken up by Jewish tradition in many different ways. It's meaning making fun of Isaac. Some rabbis say, is he fondling Isaac? Or is it just horseplay with Isaac? But anyway, Sarah doesn't like it, right?
Some commentary makes it as if Ishmael is a grown man.
Yeah.
He can't be a grown man because if Abraham was 86.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Born.
Yeah. And now he's 100. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Is it grown? Is he old enough? Right. But we'll see in the story he's still. But right. But we'll see in the story he's a kid, whether he's a teen or a preteen. He's still not. The story doesn't make him an adult, right? Because we'll see in a second the parallel to the story we read before, the casting out. But there's something that Sarah doesn't like. Now, notice how she said it said before the son born to Abraham. It doesn't call Ishmael Sarah's son. Like that never worked out, right? But now the jealousy comes back into the picture, right? So verse 10, someone pick up there.
And she said to Abraham, cast out that slave woman and her son, for the son of that slave shall not share in the inheritance with my son Isaac.
Right. So now the word is not shifcha, it's amma, which is a different word for a female slave. I forgot. Like, I don't know if one is definitely slave and one could be like a servant. Like, I don't know if Walter says in verse 10, right? I mean, yes, but it's also
Because that the word used lowers her status even.
amma is lower than a shifcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. This is her child, your problem, right? To Abraham, right? Right. But but in the last we didn't learn it was her kid too, because she sent him out to die in 16, right?
It's already been, the dynamic was already
Yeah,
there.
right. Okay. Yeah, 11,
Greatly for concerned a son of his.
right? He loves Ishmael.
God said to Abraham, not to be distressed over the boy or your slave. Whatever Sarah tells you, do as she says, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be continued for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him too, for he is your seed.
Right. So Isaac's going to get the inheritance, but Ishmael will turn out okay. That's what God's saying, right?
Abraham and Abraham, the same people?
Yeah. So Abraham gets a blessing from God in the intermediate chapters where Abraham, Sarai becomes Sarah and Avram becomes Abraham. Now, like if you're a biblical historian, you might say, oh, these were two stories that kind of got reconciled as one that had slightly different names, but the Torah has this name switching blessing in it, right? Which Abraham means kind of like you're the father of multitudes. That's what it means, right?
Bigger blessing.
Right. So we see here though also no, but we see here also the Jacob and Esau story too of two brothers and blessings, right? Okay.
Material blessing or a covenantal blessing?
So here it seems to be the covenantal blessing that Isaac gets the inheritance of the covenant, which is also the material, right? He inherits Abraham's wealth because Ishmael will go on his own way, but Ishmael's going to be okay. It's saying I am also blessing Ishmael with a new covenant, if you will, a different covenant. Yeah. Each child, right? But again, it's also Isaac is the younger child, right? The Bible or at least Genesis overturns all the time that the older child is the good guy, right? Over and over again. Yeah. Right. Now you feel bad for the older one too, which, in the ancient world, you wouldn't have felt bad for the older one because they just automatically get it whether they're good or not, right? Or up through, up until the rise of democracy, it was the older child often that just got everything, right?
Also, if you look at it as a nation.
Yeah.
Right? Israel is a nation. That's kind of a second child, right?
Yeah, right, good. So right. So Isaac becomes our father and Israel, and then Jacob, who, gets the name Israel, is also the second child. We as a people shouldn't think so great of ourselves because we're not the first child, right? Even though sometimes in the Bible it says you're God's firstborn son, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. We are, we shouldn't see birth order as being necessarily significant. And sometimes who gets the blessing? Like it's only in God's hands. It's not something that we do, right? Yeah. Among all the great powers. Yeah, we're the little guy, and like we're not Babylon or Egypt or whatever. And we shouldn't look at power as the most important thing. It could be saying that, yeah.
Right, but the Israelites being kind of a revolutionary group in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yes, 100%. And right from the first chapter of Genesis said you are, created in the image of God, while that would have been a moniker for kings. Genesis democratizes and say we're all kings and queens, everybody. But at first it democratizes it for the whole world, right? Then we'll talk about the people Israel. Now, I could be cynical and say, well, not cynical. I could be like historical and say, well, of course, it's a oppressed people says this about themselves. If they can see, we're not so mighty, so we got to think of another way of talking about ourselves. But okay,
The idea of parents today about snowplow parents.
no,
Parents are trying to, well, yeah,
but,
yeah, I mean, not, to me, it's more like a snowplow, where the parent is pushing the snow out of the way for them.
oh right, okay, yeah.
Maybe she's like, maybe the original.
Well, maybe Sarah's doing that, and then the next generation, Rebecca, is definitely doing that for Jacob, right? But it's also the question. It's a question of biblical faith too. Like Abraham has this promise about Isaac already, even before he's born. What do you as a human have to do for the promise to happen, right? And that's the question. Do you just not have any kind of agency in it? Do you have to clear the path for it, right? That's a question of what faith means, right? Okay, but
Some people try to argue that women aren't part of the covenant.
right. Yeah.
But part of my argument about why they're wrong is because he says, listen to Sarah.
Yeah.
There is a disagreement.
Right.
He's telling you what to do to keep this covenant.
Yeah, that could be or is God playing just the mediator and say like, I don't know, like you could definitely read it both ways, right? And at the same time, God is kind of undermining Sarah because well, we'll see, but Sarah wants him to be sent away to die, right?
He says undermining.
Maybe.
She's sort of saying, maybe doesn't have faith, and look.
Yeah.
that's what you gotta do.
Oh, in chapter 16, by giving Hagar, undermining, or you're saying, does she not have faith that she could get pregnant? Or
She's saying.
Yeah.
I don't have to, I need to make sure mine is.
Right. Yeah, right. And that's kind of what Rebecca does too. Rebecca knew that Jacob was going to get the blessing, but she needed to push Esau out of the way for it to happen. I don't know. Okay, so verse 14. Someone else pick up. Yeah.
The next morning, Abraham took some bread and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He placed them over her shoulder, together with the child, and sent her away. And when she wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba,
Right.
And she wandered.
Right. So, is he sending them out to die? I mean, a skin of water and some bread. I don't know. Wilderness. Well, like the word we use today for desert in modern Hebrew is midbar, but wilderness is better. But like, it's still a harsh. Yeah, it's like Beersheba. Like maybe in the ancient world it was more fertile than it is today, but it's still harsh, and just a woman with a child is not safe, right? It's not what, right. It's not safe to go out on your own. Yeah, I mean, that's what I read, but I don't know.
Same guy who was willing to sacrifice his son.
Well, not yet. That hasn't happened yet. But this is really the sacrifice of Ishmael. Yeah.
So is he sending
Ah,
them?
right. Right, but he didn't. Yeah.
He told Abraham.
Here he did. Here God did. But he's not sending her with some wealth. He's not sending her, I mean, it doesn't say, with some camels. He's not sending her with, so I don't know. Like you could read it different ways. That's what, like, the Bible is sparse in language, and therefore you can read it in both ways.
Never noticed this. He placed them over her shoulder.
Yeah. There is that, yeah. You could definitely read that. Yeah. That's why, like, I don't know. But think about it. Who in 2 generations who are the people who had to go off wandering, leave their home and go off wandering? Were the Israelites.
Mhm.
And here's the Egyptian has to do it, right?
So, to your point, Abraham has reason to believe that he's not sending him to death.
Maybe,
God.
Yeah.
Said,
justification is that in the very next chapter, he doesn't, there's the Akeda, and he
Yeah.
doesn't know
Yeah.
in that case at the beginning that Isaac won't.
that Isaac will survive. I mean, you never knew. Once you got past childhood in the ancient world, you could live to 70, right? The Bible says the age lifespan is 70, right? But that's once you got past childhood, right? So Ishmael or Isaac is no guarantee that they're going to live right now, right? Right, in the ancient world. Once you got to 5, oh, now. Because you've built up your immune system and stuff, right? And now with vaccines, yeah. Right. But in the ancient world, I would guess it would be higher because there were no, yeah. Oh, but in the ancient world, I guess it would be higher because they didn't have vaccines and wild animals and whatever, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You hurt your tooth, you would die of an infection, right? Yeah. You broke your leg. They knew how to set a leg, but they couldn't do it right, you would die of an infection, right? Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Well, right now, God for the biggest killer of kids in America right now is guns. Yeah. Guns in the house. Yeah.
Chris asked a really stupid question. You said this kid was like 13, 14 years old.
So let's say he is, but I don't know. It's ambiguous in the story because it seems like is the kid on her shoulder too, right? That's unclear too. Right. It seems like from the chronology of the story, he's like 13, but maybe not. Like it's okay. Each story can stand alone and can fit into the sequence of events. Right. Yeah.
Multiple stories that.
Yeah.
And he was put on the shoulder.
Because early next morning, it took some bread and a skin of water and gave them Hagar. He placed them over her shoulder together with the child. You could read it. Yeah.
Left the child under the bushes.
So the Titan El Hagar Sham Al Shichma, they placed them on her shoulder, Ve'et HaYeled, and the kid, right? So and the kid on the shoulder, or just and the kid, like right.
Hey, could you interpret this? He's doing this all reluctantly?
Yeah, because he did say that he kind of had a statement where he loves Ishmael. He doesn't want to do it, but God says, go ahead. What?
He saw it as evil. Sending it.
He did, but God said, go ahead and do it. So then there's the glimmer of God's going to take care of. Well, God does say, I'm going to take care of it, right? Yeah. Right. And so like, this is the journey for Ishmael to become a great leader too. But we'll see what happens. But it's still like, it's sadness and we know that it's going to be okay, but it's also like, it's still a father doing it, right? Yeah. No, Sarah doesn't look that great. No, right. And again, like, they're not, there's a lot of dysfunction in the families in Genesis. Everybody's got their good points and their bad points, and there's rivalry and jealousy and even between parents and their kids, parents to their kids, right? And so like, nobody's perfect. Right. But the Greek gods, right? But the Greek gods are dysfunctional, and that's kind of the point, right? but like for the point here, it's to see them as human. For the gods, it's like to be nihilistic about the gods, right? I think, yeah. Or the Greek gods play with us too. Yeah. But here, it's like the people are. It's a bad situation, and you have to. Like life is a bad situation. You have to navigate yourself through it, right? And living in a society where you can take multiple wives creates bad situations. It's kind of saying too, right? I don't know.
I'm just.
Abraham gets out out of the two nations.
He does, yeah, yeah. True, true. It works out in the end, but like the getting through to the end is like, is like, you have to make, you make the choice based on what you got.
Just had the thought that protecting and advancing the covenant.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not child play, it's not fun and games.
Right.
It can be nasty.
It
It
can
can
be-
be what
yeah.
you need to do to get it to move forward.
And you can only make the choice that's in front of you, right? Because even though God said it's going to work out, you don't know exactly how that will happen, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
When the water was gone from the skin, she left the child under one of the bushes and went and sat down in a distance, a bow shot away, for she thought, let me not look on as the child dies. And sitting thus afar, she burst into tears.
Yeah. Sorry, Eric. Yeah.
So the child is both young and old.
Okay.
Can both walk away from some bushes and camp.
Yeah.
She's a bow shot away, which isn't that far, which
I
allows her to both see and not see,
Yeah.
but still hear what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
These 5 lines.
Right. But like, but even, let's say he even is a teenager, he could still be dying. He could still be like, yeah, yeah,
Close to death.
There are ways to start sewing it together, but
Yeah.
what a patchwork quilt. There's
Yeah.
some sense
Yeah.
and logic.
right. But remember the last story about seeing, she saw God, she heard, God heard her, God heard, right? But right now she's like, she's in depth of despair, so much so that like she can't take it anymore, but she can't totally go away either, right? Yeah. 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 Yeah.
The rabbis get the bow shot thing. I mean, some of the
Oh.
commentary says when Ishmael was playing with his younger brother, that it was.
With bow and arrow.
But he was shooting him.
Yeah.
with
Like
bow.
William Tell.
She's
Yeah.
like,
I think so. Well, it becomes later that he becomes a hunter and things like that. So maybe, yes. Yeah. And the Israelites, I don't know if there's a later Jewish tradition, but Esau was also a hunter. Israel, in Jewish law, you can't hunt, right? You can only eat meat that either you trap, which is not easy, or you raise, right? So you could trap a deer and eat it, or you raise sheep, right? Which is easier, but you can't hunt. No, you can't hunt, because hunting, the animal, you hit the animal and it dies in pain, right? And to be a kosher meat, you have to slit its throat. What's that? Yeah. Right, but Israelites are not allowed to be, right? Yeah. Yeah.
When I read this, to me, it runs like a fog of war, where you really don't really, the mind's so contradictory and so all over the place, maybe a little bit the point.
Yeah.
It's hard to-
Yeah, hard to know what's happening, and especially when God comes into the picture, everybody gets confused about what's actually happening. That's very much a biblical trope. I want to say one thing. Holy Blossom Temple, where I used to work in Toronto, the sanctuary is a big pre-World War II sanctuary, so it looks like a big European synagogue with beautiful stained glass everywhere, and the stained glass has as some of it are biblical scenes, and one of them there's a little chapel off to the side of the sanctuary, and one of the scenes is Hagar cradling a child, right? Which I don't know if you would see often in a synagogue, but like, they decided to do it. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's what it looks like. Yeah. 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 And Hagar is in African American Christianity. Hagar is very important, because who is she? She's a slave. She's the African, right, from Egypt, right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, in Islam, she's very important. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Yes. But in true. We'll get to there in a second, but African American spirituality, Hagar, has been very important too. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
God heard the cry of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heeded the cry of the boy where he is. Lift up the boy and hold him by the hand, for I will make a great nation of him.
Right. So Elohim, or the Vayishma Elohim, right? And that's his name, Yishmael, Elohim, right? Here, God heard, right?
Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. she went and filled the skin with water and let the boy drink. God was with the boy, and he grew up. He dwelt in the wilderness and became a bowman. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt.
Right? Back to her, just like where did, in a couple chapters, where does Abraham get a wife for Isaac? Back home, where he's from, which is in the east, and she got a wife for him in the southwest, where in Egypt, right? Okay.
If there was the most important line.
What's that?
God opened her eyes. The well was always there.
The well was, yeah.
It was
Her-
her peace of mind, her panic that she couldn't see the well.
Yeah.
But what God did was gave her the calm and faith to open her eyes and see.
Yeah.
Right? It says specifically, he opened her eyes and she saw it. The well was always there.
Yeah.
He provided.
Yeah, yeah. Very nice. Yeah, thank you. But again, the hearing and the seeing and who sees whom, right? Did I say that right? Who sees whom, right? God sees, who does God see in this story? Hears, right? Good. In the first story, God sees, in this story, God hears. But who does God hear and see? Are the downtrodden, the oppressed. In this story, it's an Egyptian. When we get to the book of Exodus, it's the Israelites who are oppressed in Egypt. So is this a story of the Exodus in reverse? And then later in the Torah, you're not allowed to oppress the Egyptian, right? It's specific. You can't oppress a ger, the resident alien, and specific, you can't oppress an Egyptian. Says, because even though even though you were slaves in the land of Egypt, the Egyptians also let you in, right? That's the story of Jacob and his sons going down to Egypt, right? So is this story kind of a foreshadowing of God hearing the cries of the slaves in Egypt? Right. Yes. Yeah.
It also shows the commonality that all these people share.
Yeah.
And that why we shouldn't be.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. That's definitely there too. Yeah. Yeah. It's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a story of difference. We are different people with different covenants, and we're related. And, back to the beginning of the Torah, we're all related to Adam. We're all related to Noah, let's say, right? We're all related to Noah, right? So that's it too. Yeah. Yeah. And we've all done bad things to each other. I think it says, yeah. And God's looking out for all peoples, right?
Really strikes me with some of the discourse recently in America. Here, the importance of having children and having a family and how important that is. And
What's the natural way of having a family too?
concern,
Yeah.
people don't feel that way anymore, but they may not do for society.
Yeah. And who?
So much reaction to this.
Hmm.
Kind of attitude.
What's the attitude?
Children that the worth of,
Yeah.
it's the worth of
Right.
even women are,
Yeah.
because if they have or do not have children.
Yeah,
and,
right.
you know, it's
Right.
like-
And so the Torah is pronatal, definitely. That be fruitful and multiply. So in the opening chapters of Genesis, be fruitful and multiply, and it's for the whole world, not just for the Israelites, right? But because which is a revolution of a Babylonian story, that why did the gods cause the flood? Because the humans there were too many humans and they got annoying to the gods, right? And for the Israelite God wanted more humans, but why did God cause the flood? Is because the humans weren't behaving, right? And so yeah, more people does have a problem because it could get out of hand ethically, not get out of hand noisily from that the Babylonians would say. Right. What do you mean? So that's why celibacy. Oh, right. So Sodom and Gomorrah, right. So, the in-between chapters here. So some strains of Christianity see Sodom and Gomorrah as you know, against homosexuality, right? But the Jews have always seen Sodom and Gomorrah as not welcoming not welcoming strangers. The sexual violence was just the means they used to not welcome strangers. It wasn't it wasn't the sexuality itself, right? Yeah. So that's the story you read on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. It's about, you know, yes, there is Isaac being born there and the continuation of the covenant, but also the near sacrifice of Ishmael. Today you read the chapter of the near sacrifice of Isaac, right? Now, Ishmael and Isaac come back together at the death of Abraham. When we don't know what they say to each other, we don't know, but they do come back together in the Torah. And Abraham, after Sarah dies, Abraham marries a woman named Keturah. The rabbinic tradition says that's Hagar, just another name for Hagar, that they do come back together. Yeah.
Be a serial monogamous.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So, there, comments, questions?
It's our new year.
Yeah.
So we're celebrating not just the beginning of the year, but the beginning of the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the beginning of the, I don't know what you call the descendants of.
I mean, in the Bible, they call them Ishmaelim, the Ishmaelites. Yeah.
So, but is this the birth of the Arab nation?
Right. So that becomes later. I don't know, like historically, when people from Arabia tie themselves to Ishmael, but like the Bible definitely sees it that way, that the people that become in Arabia, the southeast, are the descendants of Ishmael. Now, I don't know the people themselves there when they started seeing themselves that way, or if it was from this time too. I'm not sure. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. So Abraham and Ishmael have more of a relationship in the Quran, but the Quran comes 1,000 years, no, more than 1,000 years after this story. What's that? Yeah. And this story is probably 1,500. Right. But those stories are marinating in the place, right? So yeah.
Biblical story is paraphrasing and snippets of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Right. It tries to capture the moral message. It's not every way of the story.
Right.
The story is kind of common knowledge to the people
Right.
speaking to.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, you know that story of Isaac when that whole thing went down?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point I made.
Yeah. Right. Right. It's not as much. It doesn't have a narrative as much then. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So Isaac. Right. So Isaac and Abraham at Mount Moriah, which becomes Mount Zion, which is where the Temple Mount is, right? That's the binding of Isaac. In the Quran, it's in Mecca with Abraham and Ishmael, right? Yeah. The Kaaba stone, right?
About where they come from.
Yes, but the Arabic, sure. Yeah, I mean, there was an oral culture. Yeah.
It's the same kind of, to me, it's the same thing, there's a lot of these stories going around.
Yeah.
And the Quran is one of the newer editions of these stories.
Yeah. But
But
there was pre-Quranic Arabic literature. Right? Yeah.
So the only people who might still consider themselves descendants of the Ishmael would be the Saudi Arabians?
No, I don't know. I mean, like that, you can't say stuff like that, but it's like, you know, someone speaking Arabic in Morocco, did their family lineage go all the way back to what's Arabia? Maybe not. Like, but it doesn't matter. The Arab identity, but like the same for all of you Jews too. Like your mother's line 1,000 years ago might have been some German woman in the, you know, around the Danube, who, like, to be a lineage is a bigger thing than to be genetically totally from there, right? Yeah.
I think most people feel that Abraham's about it.
Yeah. But it's partly so. But to be a Muslim, it's partly quote, I'm putting quotes genetic, but also partly spiritual, because like when other peoples became Muslims, some of them tried to put their roots back to the Arabs, but some of them say, no, we're become adopted by, right? And so like someone in Pakistan who doesn't speak Arabic, they would see it's like Christians, it's more of a spiritual father, even though the founders of Islam, well, not the founders, there's no founder of it. Or Adam is the founder of Islam. Uh, uh, Muhammad just brought Islam back to the world, right?
Right.
Yeah.
If you took it as capital I and over I.
Yeah, right. It,
Capital M Muslim,
right.
right?
Yeah.
But then with the law later, it's just.
So,
Why you might do a lot of people.
right, exactly. Right, yes. So great. Any other comments?
It's hilarious that the last two paragraphs of this chapter are just random political meetings with
Yes.
people.
Yes, they're going to give
By the way, there's other people we meet with, they're also great nations, we made deals with them, this is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. It puts Abraham back in the world of
Amazing.
Yeah.
A little extra pile.
And then we get to the Akedah. Yeah. Which maybe next year we'll study it. Maybe next year we'll flip our readings. I don't know. So good. Let's do some learning and some participation in the shofar service. Okay. So I have to say one thing. So the shofar. So the main parts traditionally where you hear the shofar actually happens in a part of the service called Musaf, which the Reform movement got rid of Musaf for various reasons. One, because a lot of it centers around the rebuilding of the temple on Shabbat, the Musaf service, but also the Reform movement had 200 years ago, 150 years ago, had a value of shortening services a little bit. And so then we had to have an idea, where do you put the shofar service if there is no Musaf? So Gates of Repentance stuffed it all in the Torah service. Mishkan Tefillah spreads it out through the morning service, but we're going to do it all in sequence. There are three main parts of the shofar service. Malchuyot, which means sovereignty, right? That blowing the shofar declares God as the king, right? It's like the royal band, right? Zichronot, which means remembrance, right? That we're blowing the shofar so that God remembers us, that we're descended from Abraham, right? That like the ram's horn, Abraham found a ram to sacrifice instead of Isaac, things like that, right? We'll see. And then the last one is shofarot, which means, shofarot, the shofars, that in the future, the shofar was going to be sounded heralding the days of the Messiah, the days of peace, right? Those are the three main ideas. How it works is there's biblical verses that lead up on these themes that lead up to the blowing of the shofar, okay? And there are different traditions of blowing the shofar at other times too, because some people say you should hear it sounded 100 times. We're not going to do 100 times, but there's also the three main calls, Tekiah. So one of the names of the day of Rosh Hashanah is Yom Truah, right? Truah becomes one of the calls of the shofar, but it just means like a blast, right? The day of horn blasts. And so then the rabbis argue, what are these horn blasts? And they say the Tekiah is one sound. The Shvarim is three sounds, so that three sounds in that length of the one sound, right? Shvarim means broken. Then the last one, Truah, which just means a sound, but it becomes a staccato notes, I think at least 9 it's supposed to be, within that one, in the length of that one blast, right? Okay. It's not, the shofar is meant to sound jarring, right? Some jarring. Some, classical Reformed synagogues 100 years ago got rid of the shofar and had a French horn, so it sounds nice, right? Or a trumpet or something. But the point is that it doesn't sound nice. And so I'll just talk a little bit about some. Yeah, Aaron.
Militarily also, the shofar was used
Yeah.
to great
Good.
advantage by Moses in the desert trying to deke out all these people.
Right. And we read, yeah. Yeah, so it's also a battle horn, right? Which we read, a lot of you here, we read the story of Joshua and Jericho, and they blew the horn. Now, in the ancient temple, they also had actual metal horns, but they also had a shofar, right? But Rosh Hashanah becomes the day where it's a mitzvah to hear the shofar. In Jewish law, the shofar, you don't have to blow it yourself. You have an agent do it for you, right? But that agent has to have the intention to blow it for you, the people that they can see in the room, and the people who hear it have to have the intention that they're doing the mitzvah of hearing the shofar, right? And I'll say a few more things. This is what's called a Yemenite shofar. It comes from an animal called a kudu, which is some kind of African animal. I looked them up. They're quite beautiful. Yeah. But most, and I find this the easiest one to blow. Most shofarot though come from a ram, which is a male sheep, right? But it could be any kosher animal with a horn, not antlers. Antlers can't be hollowed out, and antlers are the things that fall off seasonally, like the deer as an antlers, moose or antlers, right? What's that? They're solid, and I think they're made from the same material as fingernails, right? And so a horn, though, doesn't fall off. It comes, you got to cut it off the head, and then it has like bone marrow in it that you have to like take out. But I read somewhere you don't use cow horns because I forgot why. Because I mean, sheep is preferred by a lot of people because it remembers the story of Isaac, right? And so yeah, and I think it can come from an animal that's already dead, but
It doesn't kill the animal necessarily, is that correct?
no, to cut off their horns, but that would be like suffering for the animal. I think, yeah.
They can't protect, it's kind of
Yeah.
like ecology.
Right, but it's also like it would hurt them, I think.
Could it come from the ram that was stuck in the bush?
Right, so they killed that ram and
Yeah.
sacrificed it, and then you could take take the horns off. Yeah, exactly. All right, and so any questions, Shofar? You see in America these days, or in the last 10 years especially, shofar has become very popular in evangelical world as a battle horn. So Trump rallies, you'll see a shofar and things like that, right? January 6th, I'm sure there was a shofar involved. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a call to arms, or call to action, we'll say, call to action, right? But there's become a tradition that all through Elul, the month leading up to Rosh Hashanah, you blow the shofar every morning, but you don't do it the day before Rosh Hashanah, so that on Rosh Hashanah it's a mitzvah to hear it, right? Okay, and we'll say the blessing, right? Any other questions? Okay, so we are turn to the Machzor to page 202, where it's Aleinu, where this is where Aleinu originally comes from, is, it might have been in the temple itself, but definitely the shofar service. It eventually became part of the daily service by the Middle Ages, but this is called the Great Aleinu, and there's a tune, a very old chant in Ashkenazi Judaism. Na, na, na. That's called the Great Aleinu tune, right? Eric, who comes from Toronto, do you recognize that? It's the chime of the Toronto subway. Yeah, it's the chime. When the train comes, it goes da na na. So, and so on Rosh Hashanah, and then also on Yom Kippur, we do the ancient practice of Aleinu when we say Va'anachnu korim, that means and we bow. So in the temple, when they got to those words, they would bow all the way down to the ground, right? And so we still do that on Rosh Hashanah and on Yom Kippur. When we do Aleinu daily, it's just a bow at the waist, right? Okay, so I will do it. You can do it with me if you want. Yeah. So what's that? I saw Susan step out to do it. Yeah, very nice. And so that's where the main shofar service starts with Aleinu. Okay, so everybody stand up. Page 202. And here's the art here. You don't have to go all the way down to the ground. Don't worry. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol v'teit gilul yotev reshit shelo asanu kirgoya haratzot v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chalkinu kahem v'gor aleinu k'cho hamonam va'anachnu korim v'mistachavim u'modim Melech Malchei Hamlachim. We get up here, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Shehuno Teshmayim V'Yosed Aretz U'Mashav Yekarov Hashemayim Mima'al Shechina Tuzo B'Gov Himel Romim Hu Eloheinu Einod Emet Malkeinu Efezu Ato Kakatuv B'Torato V'Dat Hayom V'Hashavota Elavavecha Ki Adonai Hu Elohim Hashemayim Mima'al V'Ha'aretz Mitachat Ein Od. Okay, you can see. Right. So that has nothing to do with no. Well, that has nothing to do with reform or conservative. I mean, first of all, it just the cantor wants to sing that tune or not, right? But that tune, it's the Itsy Bitsy Spider, and they do. Yeah. I mean, short, yeah, abbreviate things. Yeah, sometimes that's part of it. Okay, so page 203, biblical verses to remind us. Awake, you sleepers, from your sleep, rouse yourselves from your slumber. Awake like Israel at the sea to the joyful song of Miriam and Moses. Sing to the eternal. Awake like Israel at Sinai to the dignity of being God's partners. You shall be for me a holy nation, a sovereign community of priests. Examine your deeds and return to God. Remember your Creator, you who are caught up in the daily routine, losing sight of eternal truth. You who waste your years in vain pursuits that neither profit nor save. Hear the rousing call to repentance. With trumpets, raise a shout before the eternal, the sovereign. Hear and know the truth of a higher power. God is sovereign, robed in majesty. God is clothed with strength. So the world stands firm and cannot be shaken. Let's turn to page 206. Okay, so we rise. And because yesterday was the first day we said Shechianu yesterday, today it's just the I think it's just the first blessing. So we'd say with me, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar, that we're commanded to hear the sound of the shofar. Okay. So does someone want to call? Thank you. So the first line you always bookend them with the tekiah, and the first line you do both of that. You do each pattern of Turah and Shvari, right? Tekiah Gadol, well, that's at the end. Yeah. Okay. And so we say, Hayom Harat Olam. Today the world was born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. We are your children. Love us in the way of mothers and fathers as we are yours, and service guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. This is a famous Ashkenazi tune for Reshet Sifatenu Yerav Lefanecha Yerav Lefanecha. Ram v'nisa, mebin umadzin, mebit umakshiv, lekol tekiyatenu, utekabel berachamim, uvratzon seder malchiotenu. Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware, and we call out Tekiah, lovingly, favorably receive our prayers of Malchuyot. Okay. Next is Zichronot, page 263. But 263. So how Mishkan HaNefesh does it, right? So there's a series of biblical verses that that leads into the Torah service, but Mishkan HaNefesh has biblical verses mixed in with modern readings, and that's how we'll do it, right? A messenger from another time, a stranger here in our midst, the shofar sounds remembrance. Remember, wherever you go, I am with you. After the flood, in the wake of destruction, Noah discovered the rainbow, alone on a mountain, a knife in his hand. Abraham heard the voice of compassion. At the end of her strength, afraid for her child, Hagar found a well in the wilderness. Remember, wherever you go, I am with you. And sounding the horn, we summon them back, zichronot, memories of those who saw signs of your presence. A rock gives forth water, hope can blossom in the desert. And when loving hands lighten our darkness, you are there. When we are caught in the thicket, feel alone or forgotten, the shofar sounds remembrance. From the deep well of the past, in the depths of our own despair, the shofar sounds remembrance. Remember, my presence goes with you. Okay, page 267. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu zochrenu b'zichron tov lefanecha, God of remembrance. Remember the covenant of our ancestors. We reaffirm it today. Remember, we are a people of noble ideals. Help us attain them. Remember all your people, all the nations on the road to peace. Bless their efforts. Remember with mercy the binding of Isaac, the sorrow of Sarah, Abraham's word, here I am. Our memory fades, but you remember all that we have forgotten. Your presence is a throne where all things matter and nothing is lost. Rise. Baruch atah Adonai zocher habrit. God remembers the covenant. Hayom harat olam. Today, the world is born anew. This day, the whole of creation stands before you, judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers, as we are yours in service. Guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. Reshet tifatenu yerav lefanecha, yerav lefanecha. El Ram Benisa, El Ram Benisa, Mevin Umazir, Mebit Umakchiv, Lekol Tikiatenu, Utikabel Berachamim, Uvratzon, Seder Zichronotenu. Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out Tekiah. Lovingly, favorably receive our prayers of Zichronot. Okay. Page 280. So now we're at Shofarot, which is, so we ask God to remember us and remember us because of who our ancestors are. Now it's to think about the future, right? Goodness of all the world, Tuvo Shel Olam. Today we stand before the shofar to hear in its voice the broken notes of our history, the unbroken quest from Moriah and Sinai to the end of days. At Sinai, our people accepted their calling. On the third day, as morning dawned, there was thunder and lightning, a dense cloud upon the mountain, a very long blast of the horn. The sound of the shofar grew louder and louder. As Moses spoke, God answered in thunder. Festive music and solemn declaration, the shofar gave voice to the spirit of Israel. Sound the shofar on our feast day, on the new moon when it is hidden. For this is Israel's law, a decree of God of Jacob. It enlivened our worship with power and joy. Praise God with the shofar call. Praise God with harp and lyre. Sounding the alarm in ancient days, it gathered our people for battle. The Spirit of God enveloped Gideon. He sounded the shofar, and the people rallied behind him. The shofar called us to judgment and repentance. Sound a ram's horn in Zion. Sanctify a fast. Proclaim a solemn assembly. Gather the people. Turn back to me with all your heart, with fasting, weeping, and lamenting. It proclaimed the coming of God's dominion. With trumpets and the sound of the horn, raise a shout before our sovereign God, for God will rule the earth justly and its people with equity. Summoned to battle and justice, we heard the rebuke of our prophets. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a shofar. Goodness of the world, Tuvo Shel Olam. Today we stand before the shofar to hear its voice of hope, resilient and strong, proclaiming freedom, promising redemption. In days to come, a great shofar will be sounded. Those lost in the land of Assyria will, and those cast away in the land of Egypt shall come back and worship Adonai on the holy mountain of Jerusalem. To speak out and never grow weary, to hold fast to the message of Sinai, to believe in a time when all life will be cherished, to work for that day and to know it will come. The blast of the horn sustains us in faith. May blow the shofar in advance in a stormy tempest. A mighty call that never stops, the shofar resounds forever. All you who live in the world and inhabit the earth, when a flag is raised in the hills, take note. When a shofar is blown, get. Okay. Page 282. You revealed your glory, a presence in a cloud, and your people became holy when you spoke with them. Amid thunder and lightning, you made yourself known. With blasting shofar, you appeared, right? That remembers to Sinai. God revealed to us and to our fathers and mothers before us, God of revelation, play the song of our freedom on the great shofar. Let your banner fly over the gathering of our exiles. Bring back the dispersed. Let those who are scattered find their way home. Let joyful songs of Zion greet us in Jerusalem, your holy city, the place of our people's eternal happiness. Okay, 284. Very nice. Baruch atah Adonai shomea kol truat amo Yisrael barachamim. You hear with love the shofar, true voice of your people Israel. The day the world is born anew, this day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. We are your children. Love us in the way of mothers and fathers. We are yours in service. Guide us in the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out to Kia. Lovingly, favorably receive our prayers of Shofar Road. So. Thank you for indulging my shofar blast. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the Yemenite shofar is much easier to blow than a ram. A ram or an ibex or something.
Why? Because.
I don't know. Is it? I think the bigger and easier for the sound to go through. Yeah. So,
Trick is always in, like, making your lips flutter
Mhm.
rather than.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So friends online, Chag Sameach, Shana Tova.